I want to talk about. So there was one book that I was reading from the past 2-3 days, and I read the first chapter of that book, which is 0 to 1, and it's by Peter Thiel. And I would really recommend you as a friend that you should also read that book. It's a very good book, regarding to those startups and business and all. So I read the first chapter of that book, and I thought about like making a video which will be like which will basically be a summary of the first chapter of that book. So the first chapter, basically what it does, it tells you a difference between extensive progress and intensive progress. So if you read the first chapter of that book, in that book you will get to know about new two terms. First term is horizontal progress, and the second term is vertical progress. So if you'll talk about the horizontal progress, now if you read that book, the first chapter, you will realize that horizontal progress, it's easy. And why it is easy, I will tell you later in the video. And then there is this term which comes, which is vertical progress, which seems to be little bit harder than the horizontal progress. So in the horizontal progress, what actually happens, that you try to take things from different where and you try to implement. So basically what happens in the horizontal progress is like basically horizontal. You just are copying things, and you are copying things, and you are then executing those things. You are not making something. There is no idea of innovation. You are not making anything. You are just basically copying something and implementing it. But in case of vertical progress, what happened, that you go from 0 to 1. So in horizontal progress, what happened, that you start from 1 and you go to n. So this is basically you are doing basically you're copying things. You're not making anything new. But in case of vertical progress, what will happen, that in that you're making something, you're building something which no one has ever done it before you. So that's the difference between the horizontal progress and the vertical progress, and why it is very important to have new people who basically are more inclined towards vertical progress. So if you read the first chapter, you will get to know that if you will see the right example of if I'll give you an example of the countries who are basically doing a horizontal progress, China is one of the country. So if I'll talk about China is a country which do not like to innovate something on their own. So if you will see their past history as well, China is a country which like to copy things. Like it like to take the things from different worlds, and it like to slightly copy it from the other countries and try to implement in their own countries. But that is the case with China. But if you will also see, that is horizontal progress, and horizontal progress is never meant for a peaceful civilization. Why I'm using the word peaceful civilization, I will also tell you later in the video. And now I'll talk about the vertical progress. So vertical progress, which basically means something that has never been created, and you have the guts and you have the courage to make something new and something innovative, something that no one has ever seen about it. And if you will also see what is the difference between if you will see the vertical progress, all the developed countries, not the developing countries, all the developed countries, which consist all the Western countries and USA and all those countries, those are basically inclined more on their vertical progress. So if you will talk about America, the Silicon Valley was the vertical progress, because before that there has never been any country, there has never been any country who has that kind of a tech field, that tech world. Like, so USA was the first country to have a technological development so much that they had their own Silicon Valley. So that is a vertical progress. Why? Because they had their own technological development. Okay, so that is the sign of a vertical progress. And why all the developed countries, whatever they have achieved, it's still being achievable by all the developing countries as well. For example, India, China, and mostly all the countries from the Asian, all the southern Asian countries are still need to be developed, because we are more inclined on the horizontal progress, not on the vertical progress, where we are innovating something. Basically what we did as if you will see the southern Asian countries, which include like China, India, and all these countries related to close to us, we are basically inclined more towards taking things, taking technologies from the different countries, and we are not trying to make something new on our own. So that's why that is the basic difference between the countries who are following vertical progress, they are at the top, and still the countries who are trying to copy things, they are also developing, but they'll need to figure out things by themselves also. Some things needs to be figured out by themselves. So that is the basic difference between a vertical progress and a horizontal progress. And there are two things that has happened in the past if you will see, two things which I'd like to mention. First one is globalization, and the second thing is technological development. So if you all know this 21st century, when we were in the 20th century and right now, whatever the phase we are living right now, there is a difference of like millions, because in the 20th century, the things that we used to imagine, we used to fantasize those futuristic things, that, like for example, airplanes. Before 20th century, there was no airplanes. Right now, it's very common for us to introduce towards airplanes, and everything can fly and everything. But in the pre 20th century, for example, in 1900s, in 1910, 1915, there was nothing like that. So that is the difference between those futuristic things still needs to be get attained, because the people who were in the 20th century, they used to fantasize these futuristic things that we are doing right now. All these things are being attained by themselves, are being dreamed by themselves, because those people used to dream about these things that we are right now we are doing. For example, internet was a dream, it was a futuristic thing for them. If you will introduce this technology 100 years back, they will seem it to be a magic, because they didn't knew anything about it. So that is why it's always vertical progress is always more important than any kind of things. If you will see, there are two type of terms that I used in this video prior. First one is globalization and the second one is technology. If you will see the past 200 years, you will see from, I am not mentioning the years, but from somewhere between from 1800 to 20 to 1910 or something like that, that was the period which was considered to be a globalization. Globalization means there is more international trade between countries, there is more good international relation between any two countries. For example, American relations with all the European countries as well. So like that was very important for during that period of time, from that globalization period, which is from 1820 to 1910 or 15, something like that. So that was also very important for a good civilization, because if we are developing and if we will not connect ourselves, or if we will not connect our culture with any other country as well, we will not grow. So that is also very important, to learn others countries' culture and their people how they think. That was also very important. And then came to the technological phase of the world. If you will see the technological field, there is no certain time, but it used to be considered that after 1925 to 1971-75, it was considered to be a technological development, because that was the time when, if you will see, the most important mission that was gone to the US, that Apollo 11, in which Neil Armstrong was the first person to, that was also a sign of a great technological development, because with that technology we were able to land on the moon. So that is also come in that phase from 1925 to 1971. I think Apollo was launched in 1969, I don't remember the year. So that phase was considered to be the technological phase of the humanity. And if you would also listen, one thing which I prior mentioned in this video, that why it is important to have 0 to 1 kind of progress, which is a vertical progress rather than the horizontal progress. Why am I saying this? Because, for example, if you will see the world statistic, China is the only country which their carbon emission is the highest. India's is in the second number, China is on the first number in emitting carbon. Okay, they are emitting carbon, and they're having the highest industries in the world, and they're having the highest number of people who are working as well. Progress, and they're not innovating something, and they will continue to do that kind of work for the next 20 years without any innovations, without any new technologies. What will happen in that case? That they will emit more number of carbons. Their carbon emission will go higher and higher and higher. Why? Because they are not innovating new ideas which will reduce the number of carbon emission, which will reduce the pollution. They are going for the profitability, and they're creating things, and they're not thinking about how we can innovate, how we can make new technologies which will reduce the carbon emission, which will reduce the pollution. They're not thinking about it. They just wants to be number one. They just wants to get ahead of America, and they're using the resources like, there is no foundation to it. So if they will not innovate new technologies, in that case the pollution will go higher. That is why it's very important to have a vertical kind of progress, not the horizontal progress. Horizontal progress is easy, it's highly achievable, that's why we tends to go towards that. We are not tends to go towards the vertical progress because it's hard to have a new idea. Like for example, you're having a new idea, there are lots of uncertainties that you might be pass or you might get fail. So there are lots of uncertainties when you are going for the vertical progress, because you have to have a new idea, then you have to implement it, you execute it, and then also there is no guarantee that you will pass or fail. So that's why people are going for the horizontal progress, and that's why I'm giving weightage to more to the vertical kind of progress, not to the horizontal progress. So that's why I tried to talk about this topic which I was reading from the last 2-3 days, and if I'm able to make any kind of impact on you people, then that would be really nice for me. Thank you so much for giving your time. I am Prince Yadav and I'm 19 years old. I'm a BTech student. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.